Jarome McGinley busting in, drops it back for Crosby, feeds it across the net, backdoor score! Jarome McGinley with a beauty!
I mean, that's tape, eventually to tape again, and then tape, and then net. That's slick.
3-on-2, Stahl to the net! Oh, what a stop! How did Hiller keep it out? Gets slapped! Oh, an even better stop by Jonas Hiller! Save of the night!
Now Zach Parise bends it down to the Canadian zone. A race for it. Corey Perry has a takeaway. They score! Ryan Kessler, the Vancouver Canuck, sticks a dagger into Canada.
It is Sportsfeld Storytime. We are taking you back to February of 2010. Where were you when? It is the 2010 Winter Olympiad. We are talking about, of course, the gold medal game, Canada versus the USA. An instant classic, one of the all-time games where if you were a Canadian hockey fan and you were watching this game, you generally, I think, and I don't try to overuse this, I think this is one of those ones where people will remember where they are and what they were doing their entire lives when if they watch that game.
Yeah, I mentioned it when we get to the actual game, but there's some statistic that is debated, but there is a statistic that says 26.5 million Canadians watched at least part of this game, which is almost the entire country, which is insane. Like, even just from a objective perspective, that's insane to have an entire country almost entirely watching the same thing.
Yeah, no, unquestionably. But as we spoke to in the previous episode, it was that hype. It was can't miss. It was basically the only sporting event that mattered in the world by the time the finals rolled around. That's for sure. There was no other Olympics even. This was the last event of the Olympics. Canada sort of booked it that way so that the gold medal hockey game would be the crown jewel, would be the closing ceremony, would be the last event, and it lived up to the hype, which is really all you can really ask in these sort of situations. We went over the roster a little bit in the last episode just to sort of refresh your memories. Brodeur, Fleury, Luongo, and net. Your defensemen, Boyle, Doughty, Keith, Niedermeyer, Pronger, Seabrook, and Weber. Forwards, Bergeron, Crosby, Getzlaf, Heatley, Iginla, Marlowe, Morrow, Nash, Richards, Perry, Stahl, Toronto Maple Leafs legend Joe Thornton, and Jonathan Toews. A heck of a team. A lot of guys in their early 20s to mid-20s, which is, how you win hockey tournaments. Canada looking pretty stacked, not going to lie. That's a pretty stacked team. I don't know that the results totally matched up with what we expected, especially out of the gate. They did win their first game. They played Norway in game one, and that is not too surprising that they dominated Norway. A hat trick from Jarome McGinley, 2 from Heatley. Danny Heatley was really, really, really good at hockey. People forget. No, they don't. People know.
He is sort of, I feel like, of that era, kind of a guy who doesn't get mentioned maybe as much as some of the other, like him and Jason Spezza played together.
Yes.
And Spezza is like still, like, obviously he's still playing, which helps. But like Spetz is like, okay, it's Jason Spezza. He was he was a legend for a while. And like Heatley was extremely good then too.
42-15 your shots in game one. Looking at this lineup, not even recognizable Norway players. Not, sometimes there's a guy here or there that you're like, oh, well, Matt Zuccarello. How about that? How about Matt Zuccarello playing for Team Norway at 23 years old?
I will say I do love when they're like finding the one player I know in Olympic hockey games in countries that don't have major rosters.
Yes,
it's always
awesome
fun for me. I enjoy that.
It's the old Nick Antropov on Team Kazakhstan little thing.
Right.
Game 2 of this tournament, Canada against Switzerland, a 3-2 win. Switzerland, one of those sneaky teams that I feel like always plays Canada well at every level. I mean, maybe that's maybe that's not quite true, but never easy against Switzerland. You always go into the game against Switzerland being like, this isn't going to be easy. Brodeur got the start against Switzerland after the 15 save shutout from Luongo in game 1.
I remember there was, because it's Canada, so of course the narratives and the takes have to be being fired off consistently and constantly at all times. I remember the takes around this game or after this game, I should say, and going it like you read off the roster, and like people weren't confident in this team. It was like they lost in a completely different tournament with a completely different roster 4 years ago, and everyone was like, Canada's gonna fuck it up again. It's very odd in retrospect.
And it was a shootout, as you astutely point out in the notes, a shootout win for Canada, which, you know, you need to be beating Switzerland, but the same way you beat Norway. That's sort of anything less than 8-0 would be disappointing. But this is also, you know, coming out of 2006 and coming out of a similar timeline with some disappointing. Remember the World Juniors? They finished like 8th in the World Juniors, and it was like referendum on the game.
Right.
This was the timeline
Right.
where like Canada wasn't allowed to not be great at hockey. It was a major new, like, now if Canada lost at hockey, I feel like we would just sort of shrug and move on with our lives. Like, did Canada win the juniors this year? I don't even know.
I couldn't tell you.
But when they lose the juniors now, we sort of shrug.
To that point, I was in looking this up, and you mentioned the World Cup of Hockey last episode. I forgot. I knew Canada won, but did you know that Brad Marchand scored the winning goal with 40 seconds left in the game?
Yes, I did.
That to me feels like it should be a moment that Canadians remember forever, like a last second goal to win the tournament, and I didn't even know what happened.
I have a very good memory of the World Cup of Hockey because I was working at Sportsnet, and it was like basically a Rogers property. Like that basically was invented for Rogers to have. And Canada winning that game or losing that game and forcing a game 3 was the difference between a 3-day weekend. So Marchand scoring was like a huge deal for me. I was like, yes, the one time in my life where I will fist pump over Brad Marchand. I was thrilled. I was thrilled when they won that game.
Fair enough. That's a good answer, actually.
But for purely selfish reasons, nothing to do with Canada hockey or Pacific Pride or any of that stuff.
Right.
Kind of a funny one in retrospect because the shootout, bit of a crapshoot, and really they don't have they don't have a dominantly great group stage. So, you know, a couple things go the other way. Crosby scores the only goal. Brodeur makes every save. Things go the other way. Canada is suddenly like in some real trouble in this group. Sort of interesting to look at retroactively.
Yeah, and like I was doing the math in my head looking at this. Like they won their first game so handily that like I don't think, because like Switzerland made the group stage, the knockout stage also.
Yes.
But like they couldn't have missed it, but they would have had to play a significantly harder first round opponent than who they did play.
The third game of this round robin is the prelude to what would be the big bad wolf at the end of the tournament on Sunday. It's Canada-USA, a perfect Sunday game. And Canada gets smoked 5-3 by the United States. Jamie Langenbrunner scores in this game. Brian Rafalski scores twice. Remember some guys. Ryan Kessler scores in this game. Chris Drury, who seems to score a big goal every game ever. We will get a little deeper into Team USA a little later on, but it is still like Canada loses 5-3, but they do outshoot the United States 45-22. Brodeur not great, but a bit of an early scare, and you know, just enough. The old Canada needs a wake up call. This was a big doubt, and Brodeur a questionable. Is Martin Brodeur all washed up? This was the big question after Canada fell to the United States.
Yeah, and because like I remember going in, obviously Luongo was at. This is like, A, it's in Vancouver, and B, this was like prime Luongo narrative time. This was, can he get it done in the big games despite probably being the best goalie in the world at this time?
I can't believe we're already through his career, like Roberto Luongo. We already saw.
It's wild.
Isn't that unbelievable?
And he never played here, which is a shame. I always thought he would.
What a shame.
But like, yeah, I remember that debate of like Martin Brodeur. You can't bench Martin Brodeur, but should they? And then this game happened, and I feel like I might be remembering this wrong, but wasn't there a goal where like he tried to throw his stick to knock the puck away or something, or he lost control of his stick somehow, and it led to one of the state's goals. I couldn't really find it because the Olympics is so difficult about highlights. But I feel like there was like a big gaffe, and it was like, oh, okay, maybe Brodeur is done here.
My individual memory, if you had asked me this 5 years ago, I'm sure I would have had it for you. My individual memory of individual hockey games as I age, very difficult. But I do definitely remember the Luongo should be starting because it's in Vancouver conversation. And he was, 2010, don't they make the Stanley Cup Finals, the Canucks?
They do, yeah.
So, and
the next year? No. Maybe not. The next year they did. So next year they
2011?
lost to Boston. Yeah,
right.
But
I think
Chicago. They were
was
very good though. Yeah, but they were very good. They were a perennial late round playoff team.
Absolutely. So wow, now Canada is 1-1 basically with the shootout. You're thinking, concerns. There's some concerns. Definitely not looking Teflon. Looking more like 2006 than they are 2002. They finish with a game against Germany in the elimination round. Am I reading this right? No, I don't think I am. I am not. They finished the round robin round against the United States. They're sixth in the round robin. Gives them Germany in game one of the elimination. And this is Sweden-Norway level. And this is Norway level. 8-2, 8-2 BU. Thomas Greiss getting lit up. Marco Sturm, Dennis Seidenberg. Here's some guys. Marcel Mueller, Marcel Gotch, Corbinian Holzer. Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Before we had the horror of knowing Corbinian Holzer, I guess.
Christian Ehrhoff, John Tripp. So a bunch of guys that would have cups of coffee. Alexander Sulzer takes a -4 in that game. That's a shame. But Canada sort of reestablishing themselves as a team to beat if they're playing a very bad team. The question becomes, can they beat a very good team? But this was a no-doubter over before it started. Ginla with 2, Crosby with 1, Niedermeyer, Richards, and Maple Leafs legend Joe Thornton also scored in this one. Luongo, 21 saves on 23 shots. The Canadian hockey team is through, and who is waiting on the other side of the door in their quarters but the Russians?
Team Canada trying to beat the Russians or / the Soviet Union for the first time. In 9 tries, they haven't beaten them since 1960 Squaw Valley. Here we go. He'll come in over the line. Boyle sweeping in. Center scores! Ryan Getzlaff leads Team Canada in shots. Hinkley Browns. Dan Boyle scores! 3 Team Canada players to the attack. Rick Nash scores! Here's Moore again. To the front. The ball comes down and scores! Brendan Moore! 4-1.
Canada-Russia for a shot at the semifinal. That is what it's all about. When you're dreaming up the Olympic hockey, you're dreaming up Canada versus Russia. They lost only 1 game in the round robin, and it was an overtime. You talked about the hard road they had to go through. Finishing 6th means they had to play Russia. They could have, the other option, the Switzerland you talked about, the road they took. Switzerland played Belarus and then the United States. So it was either going to be Russia or the United States in their second round, and it was Russia.
Yeah, this was really, like, you want to talk narrative perfect storm-wise. It got kind of upset because Slovakia won their quarterfinal matchup, but they were a Slovakia loss away from having to go Russia, Sweden, USA.
Crazy.
To win gold.
Crazy. Luongo in net again, nerves high.
Yeah, I remembered this one. This one felt big. This was like the team's not very good. Ovechkin was, I think, going crazy in this tournament. The Russians were very good. I remember that. And it was a tense game, or a tense feeling before the game. And then immediately it became not a tense
And
game.
then puck drop, baby. And the Canadians flying. It is a 4-goal first period. No problem. Getzlaff, 2:21. Boyle at 12:09. Nash at 12:55. Early in the second period, it's 6-1 Canada. They cruise on a scoreless third, cementing themselves into the semifinals and really locking in Luongo as the guy in net. I mean, you beat Russia 7-3. You're the goalie going forward.
Yeah, and I remember this game feeling like one of those games where you sort of can't believe it's shaking out the way it is. Like, I remember I watched at my friend John's house, and like when they went up 3-0, it was just that feeling of like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
this is fine.
That brings them to the semis, which was supposed to be the close game that we expected to have against Russia. It happened against the Slovaks, a 3-2 game on February 28th. The Slovaks, man, this is a low-key, really good team. I mean, really good. Chara, Dimitra, Gaborik, Handzus, two Hoses, Thomas Kopechki, Ziggy Palfi, Miroslav Shatan, Andrei Sekera, Josef Stumpel, Lubomir Vyzhnovsky, Richard Zednik with Yarrow Halak in net. That's a lot of NHL players.
Under 5 minutes to play. Zednik with the puck. Comes out in front. Backhand shot. They score! Handzus in front. It's now a 3-2 game. Tie. Down to 13 seconds remaining. Here's Marian Holsum. He shoots, and it's sent wide by Dimitra. Just missed the net. Nash clears to the line. 5 seconds. Puck chased down along the boards by Stumpel, and time runs out on the Cinderella story of these Olympics.
Keep this game in regulation. There's 38 in blue. Watch the stick, and then the shot by Pavel Dimitra, not able to follow through, maybe off the crossbar as
It's
well.
funny. I remember obviously them beating Sweden was a huge upset because Sweden is still Sweden regardless, especially like 2010 Sedin brothers Sweden. But they were so talked about as like the upstart Cinderella team that nobody expected. But then you read the roster, and it's like, oh, they were really fucking good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fast. I remember they were really fast.
Good old Maple.
I actually have a funny story.
Go for it.
I have a funny story about my experience with this game. I went to see the Raptors play the Cavaliers that night. I was in university in Montreal, obviously, during this, but the Olympic tournament fell, like the entire elimination round basically fell on my reading week.
Ooh.
So I was home, which was great. So I was like, I'm in town. LeBron's in town. I'm going to go to the Raptors game to see LeBron. I believe this was like a late, like 9 p.m. start because it was West Coast for the Canada game. So I was like, I'll miss the first whatever. Like, no, it was even later than that because I remember thinking like it'll time out perfectly that I can get to a bar from the Raptors game. Some downtown, whatever. I think I went to the game with my dad. And of course, this Raptors-Cavaliers game goes to overtime. And the Raptors were shit, so like no one really cared. Everyone was there to see LeBron. I believe Donyell Marshall had a big game for the Raptors that night.
Sure.
But what made me laugh at the time was it was like a very close game, and it's still against LeBron, so the crowd, and it's still a Raptors crowd, so the crowd's super into it. And then in between the fourth quarter and overtime starting, the entire building cleared out because everyone was going to watch the hockey game. And I remember we stayed to watch overtime because it's only like 5 minutes, like whatever. And we ended up having to watch this game, I think, in the basement of the Royal York Hotel because it was the only bar that wasn't full.
Wow.
That we didn't have to trap. Like we tried your Loose Mooses and your Jack Astors and whatever, and it was just like not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so it was the only bar we could find that was close to the ACC, so we didn't have to travel to miss half the game. And that had spots. We watched with like 5 people because it's a hotel bar. But it's the one and only time I've been to the Royal York Hotel to watch Canada-Slovakia.
And Canada wins 3-2. A tense one. Marleau scores late in the first. Pronger scores right after that. And then Getzlaf, 3-0. You're feeling, okay, pretty good. But Lubomir Vyzhnovsky, who was LA Kings legend, and then Michael Handzus score late. And Roberto Luongo makes a huge save in the dying seconds on Pavel Dimitra to send Canada to the gold medal game. And that is where we will pick it up next time on Sportsfeld Storytime.